the rapid expansion of mobile telecommunications has been followed by the increasing usage of mobile payment systems. Ray Anderson, the CEO of Bango, joins us now from London to discuss the prospects of mobile payment systems on the continent. Thank you so much, Ray, for joining us. So, Ray, let's first of all start by discussing what Bango is doing on the continent. I know that you are an enabler for app stores, and so can you just talk us through the activities that you're doing beyond what you're doing with app stores?
Okay, yeah, well, we're working with the largest app stores around the world, things like Google Play, Microsoft Marketplace, BlackBerry World, and throughout the African continent we're starting to help those app stores collect payments for their apps and games and so on, and musical content. So Africa is a very important market for all the big app stores, and also for a lot of the smaller, more innovative people who are trying to offer services into Africa, either from one African country to another or from outside Africa into Africa.
All right, I do know that you also have some partnership with some African-based software developers. Can you just talk us through that partnership and what that means for your activities on the continent?
Yes, we are. We're seeing a lot of interest within the African continent. We see Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa as real innovation hotspots. People have referred to Kenya as the Silicon Savannah, a bit along the lines of a Silicon Valley. And so a lot of innovation, a lot of new app developers coming out of there who are looking to develop interesting apps, services, games and so on, and deploy them out through the ever-increasing number of smartphones. Nigeria alone, that's the big population, 157 million people, and there are already tens of millions of smartphone users in Africa, in particular Nigeria, Kenya and so on, who are really avid consumers. And many of the developers in Kenya or Nigeria are looking to develop products that then are seen outside Africa for exporting their innovation and their great ideas.
Right, I imagine that it's a combination of factors, but what would you say is the key driver of the growth of your business on the continent? Rising internet penetration, I imagine, must be a factor, and there's also the proliferation of smartphones across the continent. Can you just talk us through what you think will be the driver going forward?
Yes, Bango sees a lot of activity in Africa, but I think the biggest things we've seen in 2013 have been the dramatic fall in the price of the smartphones. So the Android leading the charge, these smartphones have dropped in price by a half. BlackBerry have come up with some really amazing new devices. We've actually seen the cost of data going down. A lot of the telcos in Africa have started to reduce the cost of data to as usage has increased, they've been able to lower the unit price per bit. So that's meant the connectivity and the devices are there. And then I think the increasing number of people who are just getting excited by the opportunity of smartphones, we're seeing that driving the market. And then the final piece for us, we enable the connection, the payment connection from the consumer all the way through to the app store or the developer. So for us, the most exciting thing we've seen is the emergence of MMIT's technology, iFlow, which is connecting into some of the wallets around Africa. Quite a few of the people supplying services into Africa have been a little bit worried about the risk of not being paid, or long delays in payment, or not being able to transfer the funds across border. So iFlow solves those problems, and MMIT has done a great job of bridging the money flow across borders, so people can offer applications to consumers who see there's great value in those apps can pay, and the money actually finds its way back to the innovator, whether that innovator's in Nigeria or Kenya or Germany or UK. So a lot of things have happened in 2013 that set us up for a great 2014.
All right, let's talk about the changing appetite for mobile payment systems and whether or not you see this happening across the continent. We've seen in places like Kenya, it's something that has really gathered some pace, but in places like Nigeria, it's still something that is slowly people are latching onto. So I want to get your thoughts about the changing appetite, because a lot of people would identify the risks related to mobile payment systems. There's some skepticism around how secure some of these systems are.
You're right. I think Kenya has been a great example with M-Pesa, which has been driven by the leading mobile operator in Kenya and the Bank of Kenya, which have worked together to really open up a new way of payment. And in fact, that's become a role model not only within Kenya or within Africa, but also around the world. We're seeing it even being deployed into places like India and perhaps even coming to certain parts of Europe. So that's set a model that could be followed. And secondly, within Nigeria, obviously a much bigger country, there's some bigger challenges possibly in terms of less centralisation. But we're now seeing the idea of mobile payment being championed by the National Bank in Nigeria as really pushing that forward. So the climate is changing. I think once one country shows what can be done, and shows that the risks are low and the sort of environment for innovation and progress that engenders, that can then be followed through in other countries. So I think Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa's always had a little bit of a slightly different way of coming at things because they've had entrenched operators operating in the old ways and sort of more traditional banks. So I think you might see that some of the sub-Saharan African countries are able to sort of leap forward into mobile payment because they haven't got some of the encumbrances of the past.
All right, very last point. How big is this opportunity? The likes of Bango are coming into the continent, trying to make a huge impact and take advantage of the opportunity. But how big is this opportunity for you?
Well, if you look at a market where this has been going on for quite a while, say the US market, we're talking about the flow of just mobile content, things like music, digital apps, games, and certain digital services, entertainment. That's been something like a $30 to $40 billion market, and that's within the US. Now, clearly, that's the world's biggest economy, but within Africa, there's some fairly big and fairly fast-growing economies. So, scale that down. Maybe even if it was only 100th of the US market, we're talking about a $200 million market. That's just for digital content. And remember, the way that this system, the MI Flow system, is working, and the way that things like M-Pesa have been deployed, which is then integrated into that, the opportunity for payment, not just for digital content and goods, but digital services, adjacent services like insurance, like possibly transportation, ticketing, all of that then flows through, which makes the opportunity even bigger. So I think we're talking about a $1 billion+ opportunity per year in the coming years. So definitely an area to be in.